Okay, who's already? Hello, YouTube. Hello. Ooh, I have Instagram, sort of. Huh. Hello, Facebook, looks like. This is going in a second here. Make sure I got everything set. I'm going to try with the stunt glasses. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. And... Hey, Jimmy. All right. Hey, welcome to Evidence-Based Audio number 164, From the Horse's Mouth. And this week, I don't have any guests planned. As usual, if you're on YouTube or whatever, and you can see the description, you click on the chat link. It's in the description in case you want to come on here and have your say at this digital Hyde Park we got here. So let me just go through a couple things. Mostly this week is forum posts people have sent to me to look at, so we'll see. First off, Reaper 6.56 is out. I'm sure Tidy has something on this. Media items allow auto scroll when moving, copying items using certain customized mouse modifiers. I don't know if you've ever tried to yank a sample across the screen and you want to find a way to scroll the screen. I think that's what this is dealing with. Allow copying per take effects from locked media items. Well, man, it's getting so granular in the per take thing. I mostly do things on the track level still. This is confusing. You can do per take locking better. Toolbar quirks. Well, I don't even know what most of this is. Add per effects instance and per effects chain when oversampling options. If both chain and instance are set, the higher of the two is used. Man, see, like I'm saying, you guys are getting so granular where you're talking about different sample rates per effects chain. Nuts. Cool, though. Nice to have somebody who actually does this stuff for you, huh? Replace show overlapping items in lanes option with offset overlapping items vertically. Add preferences for item vertical overlap. Man. Add preference for minimum height to display peaks. That could clear some things up a little bit, especially if you're editing blocks instead of the waveforms. Let's go on. Let me know if the volume's crappy or not, whoever's out there. I'm going to try. Yep, I am live now. I'm going to try to play this. Now, I don't know if this is clickbait or what, but I see titles like this and I'm like, ugh. It says the 6 worst guitar home recording mistakes. And it's like burn th or burnt or something. And I did check this in the show more. He actually lays out where each part is. And then he has the chapters down here at the bottom. So this isn't like those super horrible clickbait ones where you got to listen to 15 minutes of video and then you find out that the thing's not even actually the topic you were there for. It's not even there. No, this is a different story. Sorry, guy, whoever that is. I am busy. So, at least that's there, but let's just see what this is before I keep babbling. And I just got to make sure that the audio is going through. So if you don't hear audio, let me know.
Welcome back to the channel, fellow shredder. Bernd here. As you can see, I finally have a new setup, a little home studio, all for
That was burstingly loud. Hopefully I didn't kill anybody.
myself. I still have to improve the reverb with some additional audio treatment. So since we are already talking about home studio mistakes with this, let's go through 6 of the worst of them when it comes to recording guitar at home.
Ooh, I wish I could play like that. And is that one of those H.R. Geiger guitars from Alien? Yeah, it might be.
I'm sure you were really frustrated at some point with the quality of your own recordings. Or maybe you don't even know where to start since you don't have any equipment yet.
So this is one we talk about all the time, right? So mistake number one, getting a bad interface. And I think the forum post that we're going to be looking at is all about interfaces again too. So let's see what we got here.
One of my personal biggest mistakes was not getting a proper USB interface right away. This is pretty much the most essential thing you will need when you're starting out, because you probably want to connect your guitar to your computer or laptop somehow. And this sadly doesn't really work out that well.
Now, hopefully you know at this point you need an interface. It's which interface, right?
I started out, I had a really cheap interface and don't even remember the brand name anymore. So when it was time to record my very first guitar track for a professional studio job at home, the producer told me that the DI tracks that I sent had a weird buzz on them. And that unwanted noise was of course greatly amplified when he was reamping all of my signals. In the end he basically told me to
record everything again from scratch.
And I still have nightmares about that production. So guys and girls, please be smarter than me. Like pretty much everybody else, I'm working with the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2.
Yeah, okay, so he's not one of those guys that's going to just crank out and hate the Scarlett for no reason. That's you see that a lot though, but no, it's a great interface. I have 3 of them. I think only one of them is a 2i2, the other are 2i4s, but one's at home, one's at the other studio, and one's actually in my locker. So, but you know, it's not whether things are cheap or expensive, it's the drivers. It's the drivers, it's the drivers, it's the drivers. You're probably not going to have that much difference with the hardware side of things. It's those drivers. And sadly, almost all the drivers are made by the same company. The decent ones anyways, the Thesicon or Thesicon as Dawbench likes to say. And it's true for the Focusrites as far as I know, to the audience for sure, for the Behringer stuff for sure. The only thing I know for sure isn't that way is what we're using right now, which is an RME HDSP USB, or maybe it's a MADIFace USB or whatever, Digiface USB I think it's called. They make their own USB drivers and they blow the crap out of everything else, but you're gonna be okay with this Focusrite. As much as people are gonna tell you how horrible it is or whatever, they're full of crap. They most likely things fine.
Even recorded most of my new album Elevation with it and went into the studio with the DI tracks for reamping and mixing. Pro tip number 1. If you want something fancier, my producer
No. Okay, so here we go. Now we're going to talk about expensive and cheap. I know things have changed. I know it. But I don't like these. I don't trust Universal Audio. But remember, we talk about Universal Audio a lot on here. And there's, for all I know, all their new stuff is good. But actually, that's not true. But for all I know, that they're a lot better than they were. But what are you going to get? You're going to get something more for this? Let's see what he says. This is one of those things where they think they see a big price tag and they think that's going to mean it's good. A lot of these have so much compatibility issues.
Recently recommended the Universal Audio Apollo Twin Mark II. This one also comes with tons of awesome plugins as far as I know. But if you're just starting out, I don't really think that...
Am I wrong, or does that thing have less inputs than the 2i2 did? You can pay like 4 times the price and you're going to get less inputs? And remember last month, was it last week or the week before, where we talked about that, yes, Universal Audio was a dongle. We said it way back then in 2000, 2001, saying it now. The UAD card is a dongle. It's just a dongle. Now that, of course, because UA is, what do they call it? UA native. They have native versions of everything. And we've seen this before where people had shown that plugins that run across both of them, you run piles of them. There we go. Let's take a look. Universal Audio Spark gives you native UAD plugins on a subscription. Use it in your DAW without UA hardware. So it's a dongle. It always was a dongle. All you guys who said it wasn't a dongle, you're wrong. It was a dongle. Okay, so let's keep going here. So I don't recommend that Universal Audio. If you're gonna spend money on something, buy RME. I'm sorry, that's still the way to go. Justin, like we say so often, Justin is still running some RME from 2000. Okay, so here you go.
That you can go wrong with this one.
Intonation.
The second huge mistake that might
good.
result in some extensive re-recordings is a badly intonated guitar. And this one is a really sneaky problem factor. Because what I don't mean with this is recording with a guitar that's simply out of tune. Beautiful. What this is all
we're
about
talking
is
about
recording
intonation.
with a guitar.
So anybody who knows me, you know how stickly I am about intonation. If we got to pay for your intonation on the studio clock, we're gonna. I'm not gonna record badly intonated guitars. But it's not just the intonation on the guitars, it's your intonation on your fingers, right? You've got to play it in tune. But as simple as this is, I'm not sure if this is going to go through. I could hook everything up. I don't think I'm going to need to. There's my 12th fret. That's my 12th fret. The 12th fret harmonic. And then you could compare the 12th fret harmonic to the 12th fret. You're just trying to set the length of your string. Let me make sure I can see this is showing up here. Maybe I'll put on a bigger camera. Here we go. Okay. So intonation on this particular guitar, it's Floyd Rose, are a little bit tricky to do. Most of them you can do with a screw or an Allen wrench. You're moving a saddle forward or backward. And you know, if the problem is that if you get the 12th fret harmonic, let's say in tune perfectly, and you play the other string, like you hear this one's going a little bit sharp, if you play it at the 12th fret fretted, that means the string is too short. All right, so just make the string a little bit longer. In this case, on this Floyd Rose, you would pull the saddle back, and if the string is too flat, make it shorter, and it'll raise the pitch. And then keep going back and forth, tuning and comparing, and you'll often find that it gets a little bit better if you set the intonation a little bit flat, because most people they tend to bend a lot or a little when they play. I play on scallops, so it took me a very long time where I wasn't just completely pulling all the frets out of tune, but it's not so bad anymore. But yeah, intonation is super important, and everything can seem so in tune, and then you go to mix down the album and you can't get the bass to work with anything. You know, that's actually kind of a common problem. And well, you know, we make tools not necessarily to fix that, but definitely to fix that one note bass problem, right? Okay, so let's go on here. He's hopefully going to talk about intonation. That's actually great.
That's not intonated properly. So while your open strings might be perfectly in tune, the notes you are playing and fretting are slightly sharp or flat because the guitar isn't set up correctly. The devilish detail right here is that you might not even hear this when you're just working with this one guitar. But as soon as you start adding other instruments like bass or samples, you will notice that something is terribly wrong. And trust me, this results in a lot of drama and extra work. So my suggestion is bringing the guitar to a shop or to a professional before very important recording appointments, and also telling them the tuning you will record in. I have to admit, I personally always was about playing and practicing with my instruments and not so much about setting them up and taking care of them. So I always prefer bringing them into a shop before tours or before...
Yeah, see, I'm the worst. I like the tech stuff better, so I'd rather intonate guitars than play them any day. I'm really jealous this guy's got this H.R. Geiger guitar or whatever that guy's name is. I know there was a 7-string made.
Very important studio appointments, just to make sure that everything is set up correctly. Pro tip number 2 concerning that. Please also make sure to change your strings for the best possible results. We also change them multiple times in the studio when we're working for a couple of days. Yes, it's tedious to constantly change strings when you're in the studio, but trust me, it will pay off with your sound. Another huge and quite serious mistake on your guitar journey concerns around 70% of you awesome people that are watching this video right now. Yes, I know I'm repeating myself, but nothing has changed. Still around 70% of you fellow shredders are not a real part of our amazing YouTube guitar community yet. So make sure to join the Cool Kids right now by subscribing. At least we like to think we're the cool kids. You will really benefit from being part of our shred community here on YouTube.
So hopefully you don't nail me because I played your spiel in full here. Yes,
So what
not getting a DI track. Get a DI track. split it. I don't care if it's hard to do when you got to manage 2 different tracks. I would usually just lock them together, but there's other ways to do this. But please don't tie our hands at the mixing stage. Just get a DI while you're getting your other thing. I guess we could argue about what order to put that DI in. Like, I like to put it after a wah if I can help it. Really, it's nice to get it before distortion, especially, but sometimes you can't. I don't know.
What I can't recommend enough personally is always recording a DI track. So the naked, unedited, untouched, rough signal that comes straight out of your guitar. Because another one of my personal early mistakes was recording with a sound that I thought was perfect as a teenager. And then the producer of my first band told me that it's absolutely terrible. And he made a couple of good points. Way too much gain. Why did you scoop the mids that much? There is zero clarity with this tone. All I can hear is why did you record 4 lead guitar tracks that all do the exact same thing? Oh, somebody told you about quad tracking, right? Yeah, thanks a lot for that constructive input. So when you always capture that raw DI signal, you can give your producer a lot of freedom to re-amp.
Yes, please. So we're actually going through that a little bit right now, having somebody re-record some tracks. And they're like, oh, we just want to borrow an amp and mic it. I'm like, well, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's their funeral. We'll see.
Amp it and to change the sound after the recordings. This is so awesome because you can leave open all creative options. An aggressive high gain part might become a crunch channel section, or a beautifully arranged and planned clean part might turn into a fuzzy distorted mess. So if you are working with a Kemper or any other modern or classic amplifier, you can still record your signature sound that you really like, and you also simultaneously record a DI track of what you're playing. That way you can still send over your preferred tone for the part, and in case it doesn't work out in the mix, you still have the possibility to change it afterwards.
Also, that DI track is so much easier to edit than a distorted track. It's not going to look like blobs. It's going to be nice, sharp. Well, hopefully, if the guitar player's not total mush, it's going to look like snare drums.
I show you exactly how to do this in the home recording course that I published on Patreon.
So he sells a course, and if you watch it, you get to learn how to DI. Here's how you do it. Arm 2 tracks, or arm a stereo track. In something like Reaper, arm a stereo track, put your mic, whatever, assuming you're just using one mic. Put your mic on one side and the DI on the other side of the stereo pair, and then put on like one of the JS, the free JS utilities that come with Reaper, like Chan Mix, and just pan the distortion side, the left side or whatever, into the center, and mute the DI side. That way you can look at the DI for editing and everything while you're only hearing the distorted amp, or the mic'd thing.
Patreon that I will talk about in just 1 second. But first, pro tip number 3. When you're dialing in your input levels, make sure to check them with your heaviest picking strokes or accents to avoid any clipping.
Yeah, and I think so. A lot of you guys know that Scarlett's used to, maybe still do, but certainly used to have problems with clipping the instrument inputs, right? I know the Octapre Mark IIs definitely have that problem.
So that would be too much. Better safe than sorry. You really need a good and clean signal for any kind of further process.
I don't think there's really, it's saying avoid any clipping, but also don't go too low. I don't think there's a too low. I would like to see it. It's nicer to see a big fat signal, but I don't think there's a too low with 24-bit digital, really. It would have to be a really quiet instrument where all the way as low as you can go on this particular interface would make any kind of quantization error, I would think.
Sing in the studio. Your own minute home, this guitar tone, how to eat her. Yes, this one below and pinned as the first comment. Yes, this one might sound a bit boring, but it's incredibly important as well. So when I started out, I really didn't care about that tedious last step, exporting my files, my songs and my demos. MP3 is what I knew by name. Back when I was young, I still had an MP3.
So recording on the wrong format is exactly what it sounds like. Make sure you're recording waves. Make sure you're recording at the same sample rate your sound card's at, or your interface, for people who hate that, get triggered by that term.
MP3 player, most of you won't even know what that is. I even had a Discman. Yes, I know I'm getting old. So I really didn't know about the differences with all those formats and if it really matters that much. Turns out your producer won't be happy when you send him or her a heavily
Just make sure it's lossless. I don't know what that, like AIFF or whatever on Mac, Wave on PC.
compressed MP3 file. Of course, I also learned that the hard way. So before you start exporting hundreds of files, make sure to ask what's preferred. Most of the time it's an uncompressed WAV file, 24-bit, 48 kHz or 44.1 kHz. So don't mix up all kinds of different settings when you're exporting your files for your studio production. It will drive your producer or engineer crazy, and of course it costs a lot of extra time and work. Pro tip number 4 concerning this. Always,
Well, unless you're using Reaper, of course, pull in whatever the hell file you want, and it should work fine. Do all your sample rate converting right there on the fly.
make sure extra time and work. Pro tip number 4 concerning this. Always make sure to bounce your tracks with the exact same pre-count to make
Yes,
things
thank
really
you.
easy for the studio.
Okay, so this is what he's saying is make sure that if you do that type of render, it all starts from the same place so that you can easily grab it and throw it in there, and it'll all line up the way it was meant to. In Reaper, you can do something called move to source preferred position if they're broadcast wave files stamped with timecode, but that still may end up being the wrong thing. So best idea is just start them all from the same place.
If you just place your locators randomly with each track, it will be very tedious to arrange all the different tracks correctly.
If possible.
If you always leave 2 or 4 meshes, for example, the workflow of putting the projects together will be really, really easy, and your producer will love you for small details like that. Attention! One detail that can really ruin your high gain tracks is if you constantly have open strings ringing through, especially when you're shredding. We looked at a lot.
Hey, you're not shredding if you got all kinds of uncontrolled open strings flopping around. So, and that's the thing. That's where, like this week, when somebody was asking something and they borrow an amp so they can mic up and do a recording, and this is one of the things that can hide really easily while you're tracking. I don't know if you've ever seen those videos where, at least with me and stuff, you'll see this with lots of people do this. People have those neck scrunchy things they'll put on the end. If they're not doing any open notes, they'll put that on while they're recording. We often will stuff napkins or whatever around strings to shut them up if it's like a single string part. But in general, the better player, the better they can silence all the strings that aren't supposed to be playing. When it's distorted, you're taking a signal, let's say, with this much dynamic range, and you're mashing it to like here. And so even if you just barely touch a string and it only gets around here, now that's your threshold, it's going to be as loud as everything else. So you really got to get control of that stuff. Left hand muting, right hand muting. Like I say, if you're not going to use any open, if there's any string you're not going to use, kill it somehow. There's lots of ways to do that. Napkins, little soft rope, or just lift the thing out of the saddle and drop something on the saddle, foam, and then on the neck end you can do the scrunchy thing. But left and right hand, both of them working all the time, even individual fingers.
Helpful exercises to fix technique mistakes like that with your playing, but it does take quite a long time to adjust your technique and to correct bad playing habits like that. So if you're not quite there yet and you still have to deliver clean and perfectly executed tracks, I can really recommend using a fret wrap for your recordings. If you don't have one, you can also just use a cloth or a sock. Please just make sure to wash them first. In my personal opinion and experience, it's not that good to always practice with a string dampener, especially if you want to learn how to play without one at one point. But for recording purposes, it's perfectly fine. You will get a much cleaner signal, and the clarity of your sound intakes will really benefit from that, of course. Pro tip number 5. I always really liked the Groove Gear fret wraps and used them quite a lot over the last couple of years. Nowadays I mostly use them if I have to record tricky tapping parts that don't allow me to mute the other strings with my palm, for example.
Oh, Oh, yeah. Well, you showed you. All right. I know I'm getting canceled for this, but this video, he started out using Logic. So, yeah, using the wrong DAW. Guilty of you. Or you're guilty of this. Sorry.
Your DAW or DAW or digital audio workstation is where you record, mix, master, produce and so on. When I started out, I made the mistake of saving money at the wrong places and I worked with a free.
Again, with this saving money stuff, it's not that things are cheap or expensive. It's whether they're good or not. And I would say that there's a DAW much cheaper than your DAW that blows the hell out of it in most situations.
Program that had tons of limitations, from export settings to recording quality to effects and so on. I'm quite sure that things have changed by now and that there's a lot of awesome free recording software out there. Make sure to comment which DAW you are using at the moment. So anyway,
let's see what the comments are. Reaper is pretty hard to beat. Yeah. Let's see what the other. Somebody says he'd be pretty frustrated with Reaper if they're a beginner. I know that people say that. Remember, we've talked about this on the show all the time. I've never had trouble with beginners using Reaper. I've only ever had trouble where people were used to working on a slow, especially Apple type of app where you don't really have it wasn't really built with the right click in mind. Let's see. Yeah. I started with Reaper. I've been fine. Reaper is as professional as you can get. Tell me something better. Ooh, this guy's getting all caps, man. Reaper is the DAW for people who have experience but don't want to invest a fortune in the DAW and use mainly open source, free, cheap plugins. Reaper is the DAW for people who care about their wallet size. No, I mean, ain't about the money again, for real. Wow, that's just it's like tag podcast. Anyway, yeah, it looks like the poll went about what you would expect. The guy's using Logic, but the guitar players are probably gonna be using Reaper.
What made a huge difference for me is upgrading to Cubase at some point. I currently work with Cubase 11, and once you figure out your personal workflow, you will have a great time.
See, it shows how much I know. The guy's using Cubase. I thought it was Logic.
Recording every day without any limitations and in professional quality, of course. Pro tip number 6. Spend just a bit of extra time on research and try to find the program that's best for you and your personal needs. Most people I know work with Cubase, Logic or Pro Tools.
This guy is in a little. Is that an echo chamber? Is that a bubble, or is it just? Is that just who he works with?
And finally, something a bit more creative. How do you actually set up your projects once you have all your gear, and how do you start recording your guitar takes? What obviously made a huge difference right away is double tracking my rhythm guitars and panning them left and right. This makes them really big and awesome sounding, and you will be completely blown away when you do this for the very first time. But since this sounded so awesome,
the first time you do make your stereo guitar track, you're like, oh man, it's the most awesome thing in the world.
I started doing this for everything that I recorded, from bass to lead guitar tracks to solos and so on. And as you can probably imagine, this didn't have the same effect at all. I thought that more is more when it comes to songwriting and recording, but in this case, less is truly more. Your song and project probably doesn't need 10 lead guitar tracks, 6.
Probably not. And if you've ever been sent one of these things to mix, you want to
rhythm guitar tracks, 12 cutting out. Record 2 rhythm guitar tracks and pan them left and right. Add some guitar solos or lead guitar tracks if you have some great ideas. And if you feel like certain parts sound too empty, you can still figure it out later in the studio with your producer.
Your producer will help you out if you have a producer.
After looking at the frequency spectrum. Pro tip number 7. Please try to avoid working in the same section of your fretboard for different rhythm and lead guitar tracks. Use your knowledge and fretboard visualization skills to your advantage and spread.
So, like Joe Satriani said long ago, when you're doing distorted stuff, you really only want to spell out a chord with 2 or 3 notes if you can help it, because otherwise it's just mud. It's not really adding that much. And one way to really, especially when you're doing the stereo stuff, like let's say you want to show a major third or a major scale, or even just a 2-octave power chord. Put the lower part of the voicing in one speaker and the upper part in another speaker, and it can make a huge sound. And most of you guys are like, thanks, Captain Obvious. But believe it or not, a lot of people just put the same crap everywhere and you just end up with mud and none of it is clear.
Spread out your ideas across multiple octaves. That exact same spot in the mix. Mistakes. Make sure to get the full home command for the circle of fifths. Make sure to comment this below.
I wouldn't call this clickbait. It was pretty informative. I don't agree with the that whole, like, that they always say, you get what you pay for or whatever. You get a lot more than you pay for with some stuff and a lot less than you pay for with other stuff. So okay, and then I'm gonna speed this up. This is something that I wanted to bring. This is RME, who I absolutely love. They make audio interfaces. They make the interface I'm using right here. They make this ARC USB thing. They, when you go to look at, when you compare apples to apples, these usually have the lowest latency, the lowest CPU use at any given latency, the lowest resource use, the lowest trouble, and they tend to update them constantly. There's stuff from the 90s where they still put out new drivers. So I trust them pretty much more than anybody. So they're talking about matching analog and digital levels. And so often you're always seeing people talking about gain staging, which may not really matter. It can matter in some like nonlinear plugins and stuff like that. But you'll always see people trying to say, hey, put it all the way to 0 decibel full scale, maximize your input levels. But most analog gear, even back in the day, it's meant to get to a certain voltage. And that certain voltage usually corresponds in digital on an analog to digital converter's input at somewhere between -12 and -20 decibels full scale. So even if it was that -12, which I can't even think of anybody who uses that calibration right now, it's usually -15, I think. I think RME does -15. There's a lot of -18s out there. But anyway, even if it was at -12, that means at your zero level, at your nominal level, you still have 12 decibels to go before you're clipping. That's a lot. Asking a really good ancient days hardware, the alleged best stuff ever made, to sit comfortably around that +12, a lot of gear wouldn't do that. I mean, you're reaching the ends of what that gear can actually put out well. -15, it's even worse. -18, forget it. Now you're talking cranking the hell out of something. And so when people tell you to get to 0 dBFS, they're telling you to take usually pretty cheap gear that, again, it's not what you get what you pay for, but I'm talking like the bad stuff. See, now these guys got me doing it. But if it's really junk and it's running some really low voltage power supply, how do you expect it to get higher than you would expect the really best of the old professional hardware to get? So you're just asking for trouble. Luckily, the sane engineers at these companies that make these audio interfaces, at least the smarter ones, they're not telling you to do that. They're telling you to, treat your -15 as 0 or whatever. So let's see what these guys have to say.
Modern hybrid studios combine analog and digital production techniques. As fun as hybrid studios are, they require a seamless workflow between analog and digital.
Okay, so you see I'm at 125 speed. I had to double check whether or not I'd actually sped it up. Sorry about this, but I'm sure this is going to be worth it. But we're going to speed this up a bit.
Hardware. But this constant back and forth can create some problems. That's why I would like to talk to you in this video about level matching.
One of the reasons why switching between analog and digital recording methods can be challenging at times are the different level definitions used in audio technology. This can lead to situations where the output level from your analog source is too high, causing the input of your interface to clip, although you haven't applied any amplification. Another phenomenon is overdriving the input of an analog device with your interface output signal, despite the signal level being moderate and neither clipping in your DAW nor total mix effects. Fortunately, all these problems can be avoided by understanding some basic audio level principles.
Analog levels are usually measured in voltage ratios, such as dBu, decibel unloaded, or dBV, decibel voltage. Since both dBu and dBV describe positive and negative voltage changes, they are expressed in so-called root mean square levels, or in short, RMS levels. This is in contrast to peak levels or peak-to-peak levels.
Over the past decades, two internationally accepted standards have been used in the music industry. +4 dBu for professional equipment, which is often referred to as studio level, and -10 dBV for home electronics, widely regarded as consumer level. This may sound like an insignificant detail, but to mix these standards up can have huge negative effects on your recording. Because +4 dBu studio level is in fact about 12 dB higher than -10 dBV consumer level. And remember, this difference is an average RMS level. Peak levels can be even 20 dB or more above the stated average level. To make life easier, both standards have been implemented in every RME interface and can be selected in the channel settings if necessary. This will give you the best performance in every situation and for every analog source.
Once we switch over to the digital side, audio is depicted as a string of zeros and ones. Because of this binary nature, we cannot use analog levels such as dBu to express digital levels. Instead, we use something called decibels relative to full scale.
Yeah, remember, dBFS is going to be peak, right? So if you're expecting an RMS or a smooth averaging meter, that is not dBFS.
Or in short, dBFS levels, which have a maximum peak level and a fixed scale.
Therefore, 0 dBFS is the maximum level that can be achieved in a digital system such as a DAW or software plugin. Everything above.
It's not exactly true. You can go well over 0, right? But you have to bring it back down to below 0 in order to put it out. But we've done how many tests in Reaper where you just crank the hell out of a bunch of inputs and have them go red lighting plus 128 or whatever, and then when you turn it back down on the output, it comes out perfect. Nulls, right? That's just a technicality. I'm being a little bit pedantic, but make sure you do understand that in certain DAWs you can definitely go over 0 and be fine. It depends on some plugins, though. Will not like that very much.
0 dBFS exceeds the clipping point, thus causing an overload, or in other words, a clipped signal. It is therefore important to stay below 0 dBFS and give your digital signals sufficient headroom.
So your software programs, including Total Mix FX, are showing you digital dBFS values.
You don't want me to actually put this at regular speed and watch how slow this is, do you? No.
While on the other hand, your analog equipment is showing you analog levels.
The Instagram.
I think by now we all know what the problem is. Analog and digital levels are simply not the same. And to mess these standards up can have huge effects on your production workflow.
As you remember, dBu indicate voltage ratios in RMS levels, while dBFS have a fixed scale and state peak levels. Therefore, it is not possible to compare both levels against each other. Put simply, 0 dBu are not 0 dBFS, and the other way around. Hence, there is no general formula or method to convert dBu into dBFS and vice versa. There exists, however, a simple yet effective solution for this problem. Since the input and output level of a digital signal is defined by the operating level of the converter, converting dBu to dBFS is possible when a reference point is established. RME interfaces work with so-called reference levels as a point of reference, both for the input and output of the ADDA converter. These reference levels will not only give you the exact dBu value when reaching 0 dBFS in your DAW or Total Mix FX, but also available headroom in relation to the international analog studio level.
Hello?
For the analog inputs, we have 3 reference levels available: low gain, +4 dBu, and -10 dBV. With low gain engaged, 0 dBFS in Total Mix FX correspond to +19 dBu for the input channel, which gives you a headroom of 15 dB compared to studio
I
level.
got a sure one.
With +4 dBu engaged, 0 dBFS in Total Mix FX correspond to +13 dBu for the input channel, which gives you a headroom of 9 dB compared to studio level. With minus 10 dBV engaged, 0 dBFS in total mix effects correspond to plus 2 dBV for the input channel, which gives you a headroom of 12 dB compared to studio level. If your RME interface doesn't have this option, a reference level of minus 10 dBV can be set by using plus 4 dBu and adding 9 dB of gain with the gain knob in the Total Mix FX channel settings.
Sorry, hold on.
For the analog outputs, to plus 2 dBV for the input channel, gives you a headroom of 3 reference levels available.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, whatever. I don't know. It's a Shure BL. Shoot, I don't even know. I'm on the air right now. It's a Shure BLX4. Yeah. Okay. All right, sorry about that. That's when it happens when you do live stuff. We actually have some gear that has to go in and out. So let's go again. So I want to see what he says about the reference levels. I don't think I have these. Let me I'm gonna pop up my total mix. There we go. So where did he do that? Oh no, I don't want to do anything like that. Did he do it on here? No. And there, no. And there, no. I don't see where he did the reference levels. Where did he do the reference levels? Operational mode? No. Channel layout? No. I don't think I've ever seen this. Yeah, I don't even know what I would have for. Let's see if it shows it again. I'll take a look.
Low gain, plus 4 dBu and minus 10 dBV. With low gain engaged, 0 dBFS in total mix effects correspond to plus 19 dBu for the input channel, which gives you a headroom of 15 dB compared to studio level. With plus 4 dBu engaged, 0 dBFS in total mix effects correspond to plus 13 dBu for the input channel, which...
What the hell? What about, that's not how I want to see it. What is that in 0? Wait, that's 0 dBFS is plus 4. Hold on. Let's see it again. Sorry.
0 dBFS in total mix effects correspond to plus 19 dBu for the input channel, which gives you a headroom of 15 dB compared to studio level. With plus 4 dBu engaged, 0 dBFS in total mix effects correspond to plus 13 dBu for the input channel, which gives you a headroom of 9 dB compared to studio level. With minus 10 dBV engaged, 0
what does
dBFS
that mean? Is minus 19 is 0?
in total mix effects correspond to plus 2 dBV for the input channel, which gives you a headroom of 12 dB compared to studio level. If your RME interface doesn't have this option, a reference level of minus 10 dBV can be set by using plus 4 dBu and adding...
Oh, okay, hold on. No. No. Maybe it doesn't let you do on this. And it says total mix effects. I don't know.
9 dB of gain with the gain knob in the Total Mix FX channel settings. For the analog outputs, we have 3 reference levels available: high gain, plus 4 dBu and minus 10 dBV. With high gain engaged, 0 dBFS in Total Mix FX correspond to plus 19 dBu for the output channel, which gives you a headroom of 15 dB compared to studio level. With plus 4 dBu engaged, 0 dBFS in Total Mix FX correspond to plus 13 dBu for the output channel, which gives you a headroom of 9 dB compared to studio level. With minus 10 dBV engaged, 0 dBFS in Total Mix FX correspond to plus 2 dBV for the output channel, which gives you a headroom of 12 dB compared to studio level. These reference levels are found in all RME devices. They are fully compatible to each other, but may vary in some cases. Check your manual for further details. Now that we have everything we need, it is time to put our newly gained knowledge into practice. I have set up a UFX Plus, which is connected to an X filter from Illusia via input and output channels 3 and 4 over TRS cables. The X filter is a stereo analog equalizer with 4 bands that can add up to plus 16 dB of gain per band. With a maximum input and output level of plus 21 dBu, it is wise to use moderate levels when going into the X filter. Let us imagine we send out an audio signal from our DAW that reaches 0 dBFS. With high gain engaged, outputs 3 and 4 would send out an analog signal with an average of plus 19 dBu into the X filter. In theory, this would mean that you would only have around plus 2 dB of headroom before overdriving the output stage of the X filter. In practice, however, it's unlikely that the selected frequency band contains that much energy. But keep in mind that most equalizers, like the X filter, use a serial design. Therefore, all applied gain changes will add up. Instead of using the full power of the UFX Plus, we set the reference level for output 3 and 4 to plus 4 dBu, resulting in at least plus 8 dB of headroom. So plenty enough leeway for boosting certain frequencies. For the analog input of the UFX Plus, on the other hand, we selected the low gain reference level to have a maximum input level of plus 19 dBu. Remember, the X filter can reach up to plus 21 dBu when set to maximum. This surpasses the analog input of the UFX Plus by 2 dB, but is in practice negligible. Because
sorry, this is just a digital only device. It's all up to my other gear. Like, what am I doing? Dummy. I'm sorry. But actually, what happens if I do a playback at 0? Or actually, we find out what you know what? I'll do that later. I'll play some signal back in Reaper and see where like say minus 15, minus 18 end up on there, and the RMS meter anyway. Never mind. So I'll shut up now.
Because it's rare to add this much of EQ gain to a signal. But if you want to be completely on the safe side, you could incorporate an RME converter into your setup that could handle up to plus 24 dBu, like the ADI2 Pro FS or the M1610 Pro. Last but not least, all signals can be monitored in Total Mix FX or DigiCheck NG. Clipping is now a thing of the past.
All right, I hope this video gave you a profound understanding of how you can match your analog and digital levels with your RME interface. If you have any more questions, as always, write them down in the comment section below. And I see you in the next video.
All right. Okay. So that was from the horse's mouth there, right? That's RME themselves. I don't know who that guy is, but from RME, so whatever. All right. So we got what's going on here? I have a forum post, and this is the ones I always get on, right? Help me pick a new recording interface. Okay. They says, I have to replace my second generation Scarlett 2i2 interface. I've been considering quite a few others, but the qualifications are simple. I just need 2 channels with good low latency quality pre's, ease of setup, hopefully all of them are, and USB-C connectivity for my new M1. Mainly for guitar, a little vocals. Again, like, you know, I'm now a Mac user, right? We got to deal with the lack of ports on a pro computer. This thing was just a whatever. Doesn't really have with ports, so yeah, that's something you got to think about and deal with. Anyway, mainly for guitar, a little vocals. I use Pro Tools, and I don't think I will get much into any of the other free DAWs they might come with. But after looking at the reviews and reading a bunch, my head is spinning lol. I've been poking back and forth between 3rd generation Scarlett 2i2, Focusrite Claret 2 Pre, Apollo Twin, Antelope Audio, Audient ID4, Mark II, and Black Audio Lion Revolution. What's the best bang for the buck? Budget-wise, I know the Apollo is the most expensive, but if it's really that much better, I would consider swinging it. Anyone using these can offer some feedback, likes, dislikes, other suggestions. Okay, so first of all, why are you getting rid of your second gen Scarlett? Just because of that USB-C thing? I think you can use an adapter. I mean, I know I use an adapter on my Mac to get to there because otherwise the thing is useless. I guess maybe they have native USB. They do have USB-C ports on the back, but the cable that comes with them is just a regular USB cable. But I don't know. If that's really the reason, then I would get the third generation Scarlett 2i2. The fact that you have to ask, it probably means, you know, I don't want to be insulting, but the fact that you have to ask, you probably don't need something that one of these others might give you. And as we show in this show all the time, sound quality difference is going to be a pretty dubious claim. As we said earlier, though, the UA is a dongle and lets you use their plugins. So if that's important to you, like I say, I don't like their drivers. I tend to like USB devices, especially if you're only talking about 2 channels. You're not gonna get noticed. Okay, I'll just say it. You're not gonna get noticeably better mic pre's, no matter how much you spend, than what you got on that 2i2. Sorry, I said it. Everybody, you guys can, tell me I'm an idiot. Ignore everything else I ever say. But the fact is, those mic preamps measure so close to flat. It's not even funny. So you could pay a lot more money. You might get a tiny bit flatter. You might get a different distortion flavor. You'll definitely able to get more output, not out of any of these interfaces, I doubt, but out of some a separate external mic preamp. You might be able to get some more output level. Whether that matters or not, compared to the noise is probably going to add. You might get ones that are less noisy, but you're not, when I say noticeably, you're not going to get a noticeably better mic preamp no matter how much you pay on these interfaces. We already talked about Antelope. I don't know why I wouldn't want to deal with them. Clock magic claims kind of freak me out. I've got a 3rd gen Scarlett 2i2. I like it. The Black Lion, I doubt. I don't know. I'm very dubious of stuff like that. I would just get unless there's a compelling reason, I would just keep what you have. I'm sure you can use like an adapter thing. You're going to need it anyway with that MacBook Pro, because you're going to need the for external monitors and stuff. Okay, somebody liked their new Claret 2 Pre. I almost got the Claret 8 mic preamp, not the audio interface, but the mic preamp analog to digital conversion. They were just out of them everywhere. I ended up getting 2 Focusrite Octapre Dynamics, which I really don't want that stupid compressor on there, but I just needed something with digital to analog conversion. And those were, I think it was only like $100 less than the Claret, but I think I would have had to use a DB25 setup with the Claret as well. Somebody's got the Thunderbolt version. I don't really trust the Thunderbolt stuff. Yeah, we talked about that. I still have yet to be convinced about Thunderbolt. I know it's supposed to be PCI on a wire, but it just seems not to have lived up to it. Somebody else says they have the Black Lion, super happy with it. Yeah, Motu M2. So we talked about the Motu M2s. I think some of these have loopback drivers. The M2, I'm not sure if it does or not. I'm pretty sure the M4 does. Another guy says Motu M2. I remember when this show first started, I had one of these rooms that was still, actually 2 rooms that were still running 1998 Motu 2408 Mark IIs. Now, it's a device, like I said, made in 1998 in digital, when 2 years in digital is a lifetime. Motu and RME were so good with their stuff and so consistent with keeping up on their drivers. It's just amazing. The newer Motu stuff, I don't think that they're making their own drivers for the USB. I think that it's probably Thesicon or the Sycon. When people started posting up latency numbers, they didn't seem any different than any of the other Thesicon drivers. Let's see, Apollo lets you add more channels later with ADAT if that's important. Yeah, so does the XR18. No, I mean, sorry, not the XR18. So does the one of these Focusrite things. The Audient ID14 Mark II does as well for a third the price. I just ordered one yesterday, partly for that reason, but mostly because of the higher dynamic range in this price point. I wonder if it's really got a higher dynamic range. Might have slightly better analog circuitry. Somebody else, I've been happy with the Apollo. I use outboard mic preamps on the way in. Yeah, the other thing is PT. Like PT may work, but actually, you know, I would doubt that Focusrite would want their stuff not working well with PT. So if you're using Pro Tools, I would probably, yeah, I don't know, I would stick with the Focusrite, honestly. That's the new, you know, they used to have M Audio. They don't have that anymore. Yeah, so this guy, he likes his Apollo, but he's getting something bigger because he's expanding his inputs. Let's see. First, we need to know how you record. You said guitar, but with the mic and real amp, IR loader, plugins to the DAW. Okay, so I'm not going to spoil it because I haven't read it yet, but this guy may be going out into deep woo-woo territory here. If you only need to record with a mic and an amp, really any of those interfaces will do it. But if you want to record with plugins of amp and cab simulators, you might consider the more expensive ones with DSP, ultra low latency. No. I'm not convinced that you're actually getting lower round trip latency by running through onboard plugins. I know that is what you think, and I know that's what the claim is, but I'm not sure that that's true. There's time going between anything, and luckily it is a dongle, so it's possible to make it zero latency on there. But by the time you're using that stuff, just run the plugins. Apollo will only serve you if you plan on using UAD plugins. I have a Motu M2 and I'm very pleased with the preamp quality and the low latency. I use it on Windows. On Mac with M1, I believe you would not notice much lag. I've been told the ID14 Mark II has a very good guitar DI, and it comes with 2 notes wall of sound. That can be a lot of fun to test. Just use your Focusrite. Swing for the Apollo. Yeah, just use the Focusrite. Okay, so the guy says mostly amp plugins, but I do some live miking from time to time. Simple home setup, but trying to step it up a notch. I like the idea of being able to change sounds for certain projects. I appreciate the response. Somebody got a UA Volt and likes it. I've been happy with the Scarlett 8 input unit. Yeah, good idea. Only thing I was bummed about with the Twin is 8.in only. I'm not really... I don't think it's a bummer to me too much, but remember that. Another Motu M2. I got the Audient ID14 and had to send it back since it was either damaged or didn't play nicely with Mac OS Monterey 12.1. Been really happy with the M2. So you have to wonder, all these different competing brands that all get their drivers from Desicon, is there some shenanigans going on there? Because some of them seem to get their stuff fixed first, and some of them seem to get later. Or maybe some of them are paying what they're supposed to be paying and some aren't, who knows. Somebody's showing the Arturia Fuse, and I know we are showing this. It's hard to welcome new players into the game, but pretty interesting what they got here. There's like it's more of a synthesizer company, I think. 18x20 desktop audio interface, 8AT expandable. Wonder what it costs. I have the separate 8AT compatible mic preamp, so I'm fine just plugging into this 8AT only unit that I have. But let's see, Scarlett 2i2 to the Blacklion. Okay, so here, let's read this. I went from the Scarlett 2i2 V2 to a Blacklion unit in January 1. I have been very pleased with the improvement. I hear a slightly deeper mid-range. Do you really? I have not yet tapped into the package software, but plan to do so soon. Having said this, I could have also been just fine and happy with the Focusrite. Thank you. Because it's really hard to know what you're hearing, after you switch audio interfaces. Third gen Scarlett 2i2 is hard to beat for the value. The preamps are good for both guitar and DI and as well as vocals, though the input impedance and gain is a little too low for dynamic mics like the Shure SM7B. Latency as low as 2.8 milliseconds on Logic 96K on a 2014 MacBook Air. If I ever get into high-end mics like the Neumann TLM103, I'd probably go with the Apollo because of the preamp options. But for now, Scarlett is everything I need. I guarantee you that the Apollo is not going to have noticeably better mic preamps than the Scarlett. Get out of here. And the SM7 is a low gain mic no matter what. Anyway, doesn't really matter what the impedance is. Somebody else is talking about the SSL logic, SSL 2x2. Got mine over a bit a month ago, and I'm thrilled with the preamps and quality. Works great with my M1 MacBook Air USB-C. Again, this is another Dessicon driver. I'm almost positive that SSL is using the same drivers as everybody else. Somebody else says PreSonus Quantum 2626. And we know Jim Roseberry has talked about this particular unit. I don't know if it's USB-C or... Isn't USB-C the shape, though? That's not the format. It's USB 3 that's the fast format. I can't remember if the Quantum is Thunderbolt or USB 3 or what, but Jim Roseberry said that it's the lowest possible latency you could get. Now, I don't necessarily trust PreSonus's drivers, like for real. We've had... I don't know how much we talked about it before, but way back in the day, we dealt with a lot of stuff with PreSonus, and I really like the company, but you know that's a hard thing to do, is making drivers, and to say that these are the quickest, that's interesting. Third generation Scarlett 2i2 is great. Again, another one, and I think it provides the best bang for the buck. But all of the brands will work. Pretty much all sound alike. It just depends what you want to accomplish. Thank you. Love my Antelope Discrete 8. I don't really I don't care for that Antelope audio stuff. I'm just gonna go on from there. I don't want to keep it positive today. How about that? I had an Apollo and an Audient ID14 at the same time. I sent the Apollo back. The Audient is just as good at a fraction of the price. Yep. Because this stuff, it's not like this is a mystery. We know how to make flat mic preamps. The Audient stuff is killer. I had the 22 and wish I had went with the 44 when I wanted to upgrade. I ended up going with the Motu 8 XLRs. I think it's the 896 Mark III hybrid, but could have the number wrong. It's great and works well, but I did prefer the Audient. Yeah, we had some trouble with the 896 Mark III, just some driver trouble. It's really a great unit. That thing was in business for like 3 years on the air 24/7. So that's actually... It's one of their newer ones, but not the newest. The newest type have a totally different type of driver, I think. This was their older USB driver. Let's see. All interfaces are good. It just depends how many inputs you need. There you go. That is all that is going to matter to somebody like me. Like, if all these things work well, do you have enough inputs that you, at the same time? If you got a whole drum set and then a whole band, you're going to need something like we got. We got 32 going here. If you're a solo, then get the interface that gives you the most good plugins. That's going to be a UAD. Oh, no. No. That's a dumb idea. If you want the best sound, then probably go with the Apogee Symphony. It's going to give you the best conversion. Yeah, maybe 30 years ago. I don't even know if I want to type in here. That's how lazy I'm getting. Like, normally I would start this big old fight in here. These guys are all full of crap. Let's see. I got rid of an Antelope interface for this Arturia Storm and never looked back. Or Arturia Fuse Studio. Yeah, another guy that got the Arturia Fuse. All right, so bottom line for this guy, most likely stick with what you got. I'm sure you can get an adapter. But if it really has to be USB-C, just get the third generation Focusrite. Don't buy the whatever. I wouldn't buy that UAD one just for the plugins. I don't want those plugins. Anyways, so great. You go ride my bike because I didn't ride enough yesterday. So I will see you guys next week. Hopefully earlier this next